10,000 years ago, our ancestors made a discovery that would change the human race and planet Earth forever. They found that if you put seeds in the ground, plants would grow in the same place. Instead of having to hunt and forage, you could cultivate your food. Sadly, it didn't take long for the next discovery. It turned out that instead of spending months tending your own crops, you could let your neighbor do all the work and then steal his harvest. In fact, if you really wanted the best possible ratio of effort to outcome, you would regularize that theft. You'd get together a gang of ruffians and you'd run a protection racket. Instead of trying to grab the harvest farmer by farmer, you'd institutionalize the pillage through tithes, tolls, and taxes. Thus was government born as a mechanism for organized plunder. Civilization is traditionally said to be marked by the development of towns and of writings, two things that distinguish hierarchical states from earlier forms of social organization. But there was a third characteristic, every bit as prevalent as the first two, namely systematic oppression, usually in the form of slavery. "Who built the 7 gates of Thebes?" asked the Marxist playwright Bertolt Brecht. "The books are filled with the names of kings. Was it the kings who hauled the craggy blocks of stone? And Babylon so many times destroyed, who built the city up each time?" Take a few moments to think about the sheer misery that filled the existence of most human beings for most of the past 10,000 years. What we call history was, until an eye blink ago, the history of the top 1%. For everyone else, life consisted of a few disease-ridden and ignorant years of back-breaking toil in the fields. All of us are descended from slaves. Given the story of our species, it could hardly be otherwise. Caste, serfdom, and oppression, these were our lot from Neolithic times until perhaps 400 years ago, when, starting in England and Holland, and then spreading across Western Europe, and then across the rest of the world, a new model of social organization evolved. For the first time, the rules were elevated above the rulers. The law was no longer just the will of the king or the biggest guy in the tribe. Property rights were arbitrated by an independent magistracy, and people were free to do business with one another as individuals. Instead of our relationships being mediated by birth, by caste, by tradition, we were free to make agreements one with another. We were free to sign contracts. In short, the market did away with the coercive states that had held sway since the Iron Age slave empires. Economic liberty meant personal liberty. The free market didn't just make us richer, it liberated us to pursue our own dreams. Under every other system yet tried, success depended on sucking up to the right people. Emperors or high priests or generals or commissars or kings. But under a market system, success depends on offering a service to people around you on terms that they find attractive. It's the very opposite of exploitation. When you buy a smartphone, you very slightly enrich Apple or Android or Huawei. You add fractionally to their net wealth. But think of how they enrich you. Think of how your life has been transformed. You now hold in the palm of your hand information that just 20 years ago an entire government couldn't have assembled. And all for what? The equivalent of 2 or 3 hours of your labor every month. Of all the criticisms made of the capitalist system, the most foolish is that it's efficient but immoral. A market is neither moral nor immoral. It's a matrix within which people can behave selfishly or generously, just as under any other system. But if we regard the spread of wealth and freedom, the right of people to make autonomous decisions, and the end of kleptocracy and tyranny as worthy ends in themselves, the free market is the fairest and justest model yet devised.